Welcome to news from Northwood University. I'm Dan Goodell, joined by my co-host, Kate Hessling.
Greetings, Timberwolf Territory. We are joined here today with our new head football coach, Dustin Beurer. Dusty has spent the past 2 decades at his alma mater, Albion College, the last 4 years as the university's head football coach. In his time leading the Britons program, Albion posted a 29-5 overall record, and Dustin was named the Division III Midwest Coach of the Year in 2021.
Welcome, Coach. It's good to have you here at Northwood.
Great to be here.
Thank you. And we would love to just know, what's your initial response to Northwood? How are you feeling so far?
I love it. Once the first 6 months was kind of a rough patch, just getting acclimated to a new environment. My family was still downstate until about June. They finished out the school year, dealing with packing, living up here 3-4 days, 2 young kids at home, a wife at home. She was an assistant principal and just surviving with those 2 rambunctious little boys over there, and then and going back and forth. But like we finally got up here late summer and got into our house, and things are starting to feel normal finally. But the people have been great. People at Northwood have been great. Administration's been treated me awesome. Community, Midland community is beautiful. I feel like it's a great town to raise a family, and we've enjoyed it so far.
Great to hear.
That is great. You were at Albion a really long time.
Really long time.
So it was a pretty intentional decision to come to Northwood.
Very difficult. It was a really difficult decision. Went to school there, met my wife there. We were raising our kids by campus. I'd only left 2 years, so I spent more time there than in my adult life than I had where I grew up. And I lived in the same town my whole life. Yeah, it was a very difficult decision. There was a lot of good friendships there, a lot of good memories. Had unbelievable players on our team that were really fun to be around. Great coaching staff, where obviously not everyone can make the move and come with you. So there was a lot of things that went into it. We were kind of established and solidified where we were at, and my wife had a really good job, and so we kind of uprooted. And boy, it was the toughest decision. And fortunately, one of my mentors, Dave Arnold, who lives here in Midland, and was my coach, and one of my coaches in college, was the one who recruited me to Albion out of high school. He lived up here, and he kind of kept it real with me when on the phone one night when I was going back and forth, well, should we do this or not? And pretty much he said, like, you can sit there and be comfortable. I don't know if it was really in these words, but you can sit here and be comfortable the rest of your life, or challenge yourself a little bit. And he pretty much hung up the phone on me after that, and that's when I knew I was going to take the leap of faith and see what it was all about. So yeah, it was a difficult decision, and I think we always challenge our players to put themselves in uncomfortable situations and challenge themselves and become better versions of themselves. And I thought it was just time to see if I can do something new, or else I would have never tried anything new. Probably we would have been there for the next 40 years. So it was the time, and the timing was right. And I can say that there's challenges, and there's just things are different at the place, but it's been a little refreshing for me for sure.
So speaking of challenges, you're moving from Division III to Division II. Has there been any challenges or changes in going from Division II to Division III?
I think there's some positives, a little more time with your players, especially when it's not in your in-season time. Recruiting's obviously, you're looked at a little bit differently now by kids because you can offer athletic scholarships. But I'd say the biggest challenge right now, you have 2 challenges. Number one, we're trying to flip a program and get it moving back in the right direction, and try to replicate some success like Coach Riepma had here late 90s, early 2000s. And that's kind of our goal, that we want to get back to there. And then you just see a lot more roster attrition at this level as well. Like it's like NFL free agency now with the transfer portal and things like that. Now, we've benefited from the transfer portal, and we've lost kids in the transfer portal. Fortunately, we've had a few guys go in the transfer portal that we were able to keep, and those guys are going to be difference makers for us. And I think I had to prove myself to them, and vice versa. And it's worked out well, where we've gotten to a common ground now that we understand each other, and we understand what we want out of this experience.
Absolutely. You mentioned Coach Riepma, and that makes me think of culture. Let's talk about culture for a second. How much does culture play into a team's success?
I think it's huge. I also think it's one of the most misused and overused words in sports because people can't really define what culture is, right? I think that it's easy to point out and easy to assume that a successful department, successful program has a great culture, and typically that there are reasons for that. I think one thing people want to say is just like, hey, we have a great culture, but I think you have to work on that intentionally. I used the word intentional earlier, but you have to be intentional about that every day, and within your culture, you have to have standards, and you have to ask yourself, am I just here to make other people happy? And when you set those standards, you're not going to make everybody happy every day, but you're going to lose a lot of sleep when you let people fall beneath that standard and you allow it to happen just because you want them to feel good. So I think the one thing we've had to really work on with our program and with our players is they're really united. They get along really well. It's wild to watch. There's not a lot of friction on the team, and that's also a problem a little bit because guys like to make it easier for each other sometimes, and that's been a big challenge since I got here in January, where we were really trying to get guys to like, hey, it's not, I always use the term, it's not rainbows and butterflies and unicorns all the time. Like, it's okay to compliment, but there's also truth within the reality. Sometimes you can fake yourself into thinking something's happening by being overly positive sometimes all the time. So you have to identify, you got to be able to hold people that are your peers to a high standard. You're not going to make everybody happy when you do that all the time, but one of the things our team used to break down on when I first got here was like, they always like to break down on family. I'm like, well, last time I checked, most families, there's some dysfunction in family, right? And there's families hold each other to a high standard, and typically they want the best out of people in their family and don't have a problem letting people know when they fall short. So I don't think we were really a family. I thought we were just cohabitating and coexisting for harmony there for a while. So I guess I've been going on a long time about this. I could talk about culture all day long, but I do think like identifying what's important to you in your program and then having the guys come up with like, okay, within that framework, what are your standards? What do you want to shoot for and strive for? What's 3 or 4 or 5 things, nothing more than that, something you can keep in your head and repeat and know on a daily basis. And so you can quickly identify where you're either falling short or not. And a lot of people don't realize like culture is dynamic, right? You could have the best culture one day, but one guy's late in the program, the next day your culture's not that great. So like I said, you have to be really intentional about it. And I think it is a big part of success and getting your program, beyond talent, moving in the right direction.
Do you, as a coach, so speaking of legacy again, Coach Riepma had Go Mad and Go Make a Difference. Do you have some kind of like overarching cultural thing like that?
Yeah, I think like we talk about the Northwood way in our program, and the whole goal when we get guys and they have a foundation built for them. Guys come from different backgrounds. Maybe some didn't have a lot of structure in their life, or others had maybe too much structure where people did too much for them. So you're on it, and then you got the in between. But our whole goal is to make guys better men when they're here, and it starts with like the now. We want them to be the best student they can be. I'm not saying they have to be a 4.0 student, but try to maximize their potential in the classroom. Not everybody loves sitting in class and learning all the time. It's just not everyone's passion. Where you said you were in journalism, right? You probably loved English class, but hated math class at some point, right? And then same thing here. For me, I hate math, right? But hopefully our guys don't hate math here. It's a little bit of a business school, but like. We want to maximize their potential in the classroom. We want to be great members and people in our community on campus. Want to be people to know who we are in the Midland community. We had our guys went and greeted the students at Chestnut Hill and Central Park Elementary on the first day of school, just to get them hyped up for their first day of school. Try to help them start their year out. We'll have guys going out and participating in recess time. I think like the biggest way, I think a lot of people, community service people, think about picking up trash. I think the biggest impact you can make is on youth and our guys. It's great for our players and it's great for the students in the community. So I think it's about impacting people is how you can make the biggest change. So we want to be big in that. And then we really focus on the next part of the now is being the best teammate you can be, because without a doubt, if you're the best teammate every day, you're going to be a better athlete because of it, because you're working hard to be the best version of yourself for your team. And then it goes into the future where those things kind of tie hand in hand. Maybe our guys get married one day. Maybe they have children one day. Hopefully they all, are striving to get have career success one day. So we're trying to build all this stuff now. Like, being a dad, that completely changed me you get married and you kind of coexist. You still have your own things that you can do. And then when you have kids, I mean, that's when you really, your household becomes a team, right? And you have to fall back on some of the things you learned and trained, and, communication, and, admitting when you're wrong and fixing those things. I'm not saying I'm the best at that, but we want our guys to strive to, in the future, be great husbands, be great fathers, and then achieve and sustain career success. And then our step and model to how we do that is, number one, we want to be transcend minded. We want to go above and beyond a set standard of excellence, so we can continuously evolve and get better. We want to be preparation and process driven, celebrate milestones along the way, but not focus on end results, and focus on, like, hey, the step-by-step process that's going to get us what we want or put us in position to potentially have that success, right? There's a group of things that take zero talent but can take your team's talent to another level. That's energy, effort, enthusiasm in what you do, empathy for one another, better understand the people around you to create a more connected environment. We want our guys to care about what you're doing. If you don't care, you're not really going to put a lot into it. And sometimes it's the easy thing is not to care because you're not getting the way you want, but you're sure as heck not going to get there. We want to be expect more. Expect more is the next part. Well, expect more out of yourself, number one. Then you can expect more out of your teammates. Expect more out of your coaches. You can't just expect more out of people without doing your part. And the last but most important one, I think, one of the most important ones, is no complaining rule. I mean, I challenge guys like, and my wife says she uses this at her elementary school as she's a principal at, but it's like, don't bring complaints to me, bring solutions. So if you got a complaint, you better have 3 solutions. If not, you're wasting your time sulking on it. And a lot of times complaints are things that are controllable. It's just you're not going to get the results you want immediately, right? It takes some work and it takes some time. So you better have 3 solutions. So it's really focusing on the things you do have control over, your response in adverse situations. There's a lot of things you can envision, put yourself up for success, right? But there's also things that are without of your control. So you better have the correct response of how to counter react to what happens. So that's really how we focus on our program. And as a coaching staff, we got to love our guys, and that means holding them to high standards, right? And getting the best out of them. Like I try to treat them like I do my own children. Even though they're 18 to 23 years old, they make 7-year-old mistakes sometimes. It's just different levels, right? And so our guys, and we want to be really transparent with our players too. Like, the truth hurts sometimes. We're not going to personally attack them. It's a lot about correction over criticism, and changing that mindset. Like, hey, I'm correcting this. I'm not criticizing you. And so the quicker guys fall in line with that, the quicker they're going to see results that we all want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When it was announced you were going to be Northwood's next head football coach, you said you observed that many of our alumni and current players are very hungry to win. Are you still seeing that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think the players wanted more, right? And so even though there was resistance to some changes that they weren't used to or hadn't been accustomed to, I can say, like, the guys who, when we left spring until now, it's just a completely different vibe. Like, okay, we know what this guy's about, what he expects. It helped a few of my former players at Albion transferred up here, so they could go to those guys and be like, is this guy for real, or is he just crazy? Is he full of crap? All that stuff. I had known a few of the guys through recruiting. I had recruited them out of high school. So some were aware of me, and that helped a little bit. I coached a couple guys. One kid on our team, I've coached his other 3 brothers. So the family's very familiar with me, and that kind of helps guys ask him questions, and we had recruited him as well. So I do think, going back to it, like meeting the alum, I've had an opportunity to go to a couple of alumni events, and guys are excited. There's alums calling me, and that's great. I want those high expectations. I want people, if I have expectations for the players, people should have expectations of myself and my coaching staff, our coaching staff, to get things moving forward. So, but I love that there's a little bit of a buzz, and then now we got to go perform, and we have to have understanding. Like, it's not, it's exciting and new right now, but I also know I haven't lost a game yet. So, I might be on everyone's Christmas list now, and the second we fail, that's what I tell our guys. Like, your parents are always going to tell you what you want to hear, right? And with playing, like, what matters is the people in the room, right? Whether it's good or bad. So I do think there's an excitement, and it's been fun to hear guys who have played on some of those playoff teams and championship teams come back. And we had one come talk to the team one day, and I thought his message, and he he was speaking about games and experiences like he was on campus yesterday, and this was almost 20 years ago. So like I think it's very cool to hear how important this place is and what Northwood's done for their careers and setting them up for life.
Very cool. Well, that brings us to the burning question of what are or have been the biggest challenges for you and the team so far?
I think number one was getting the roster to a point. Well, I think the first challenge was we had to put a recruiting class together in 6 weeks. And I remember signing day happened. We, as coaches went out, we kind of enjoyed some time together and celebrated a little bit. And then that night, my body just completely failed me. I don't think I had slept in like, when I went from season to a new job and going back and forth. I was like, man, I don't know if I have COVID, pneumonia, brain aneurysm or what, but like I just started, I got sick as heck. It then, it took 24 hours to recover. I got one night of sleep and then I was ready to go again. But I thought the talent acquisition part, when you're recruiting to something that hasn't been successful recently, you can recruit to tradition all day long, but people don't care about that. They don't care about the past. It's about what are they going to get out of it now. So getting the right guys on board, keeping the right pieces that were already here on campus was, and so I'd say building the roster has been the biggest challenge. Other than that, like, I think people keep preaching like, and I'm getting sick of hearing it, like, hey, we're going to be patient with you. We know it's going to be a process. It's not going to happen as fast as you want. And I get the patience thing. There's patience within improvement, but I also want a sense of urgency to get this going. And I think like if you're too patient, you're going to let things slip way too fast. So we're trying to preach urgency and getting this flipped. And the quicker we can get in line with the vision and people owning what we're trying to do instead of just buying in or dipping their toe in the water a little bit like I do when it's cold water. It's like be like that 7-year-old kid who just cannonballs in the pool, right? And so that's the faster we can get moving in the right direction. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge right now is, the urgency and then getting the roster where it needs to be to improve.
And it's really special, the students that make up our student body. And that's got to be a challenge in terms of recruitment because you're not just picking the best athlete, right? You're picking someone who embodies the Northwood idea, right?
Yeah. And I think the one thing that was a selling point to me is like you go to a lot of places for collegiate athletics and it's not student athletes still. And I think coming from a small private college that, could be challenging to recruit to at times, whether it's the size of the campus or the size of the town. Like every school has their own challenges, right? Everything can look great on the outside, but there's challenges. And then also getting the right student and the person who's going to fit and be able to succeed at Northwood, right? And so I do think like that's a selling point to me. Like, hey, this is beyond. Let's be honest, less than 1% going to make it to continue to play football after college. And your window shrinks really quick where you don't get to go play rec football when you're older. It's like the one sport that when it's over, it's over. Like 60-year-olds still go play hockey. So, you can go play basketball, you can go play pickleball, tennis, golf, but you can't go out and put a helmet, shoulder pads on until you're 60 and play. So that window closes. And then what happens when that window closes? You better have a plan and a plan to attack life. And so it's getting those guys ready. I think Northwood does a great job at that. If you see like the success of alums and what they're able to accomplish and what they have accomplished over time, it's amazing. I mean, I've met a football alum who was a successful Harley Davidson owner, man, and he brought his family in this summer. It was his first time on campus in a long time, and he's been really supportive of the program. Coach Haynes has got him connected with me, and it's amazing to watch what he's done. Like, who thinks of like, hey, I'm going to go. Usually you think automotive, you don't think motorcycles right away, but he's doing it down there in Florida. And then then you got the multiple car dealerships and you got people going in cybersecurity now. So I think there's a misnomer about Northwood and the education that it's, I'm just going to be a business major. I'm like, there's not a thing in this world right now that's not business driven. And so, and it's unique now where when you're recruited and we came out of high school, it was like, go to college, right? If you want to make money, you better be a doctor or a lawyer. Business wasn't really talked about back then in the early 2000s and 90s. It was be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Or, maybe go run a hedge fund or something. That was it. And now people are like, man, I can sit at home in my Lululemons and work on my laptop all day and make $70,000, so it's a business driven country we're living in now, in a business-driven world. So it makes it unique that we're able to draw. I think 23 years ago, this would have been a heck of a lot harder to recruit to, and now it's like everyone wants business. What do you want to do? I want to be an entrepreneur. What do you want to do? I want to own my own business. I mean, it's all out there. So that's a unique thing we're able to sell, and I'm excited about it.
Wonderful.
Well, Coach, thank you for joining us today. Good luck with your season here. I hope it goes well for you, and we look forward to what you're able to do with the team. So thanks again for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot.
Yes, this has been a fascinating conversation. We are beyond grateful to have you here today to kick off this new monthly podcast by Northwood University. We have some pretty big podcast plans in the works, including a new series hosted by Dr. Kristen Stahauer, our academic vice president and provost. She will give listeners a gateway to understanding the groundbreaking research, innovative teaching, and real-world impact of Northwood's faculty members. These enlightening conversations will bridge the gap between academia and industry and provide valuable insights into the world of business and beyond.
We're also bringing back Keeping Up with the Pack, the popular student-led podcast. And we're going to be developing a new podcast that will be looking at the Northwood idea, what it means to be a Northwood student, and how we can do that with students here as well. We'll post all of our podcasts on the major platforms, and we'll be posting this podcast to our Northwood YouTube channel as well. And make sure that you subscribe to get the latest updates from Timberwolf Territory. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next month.